that's okay. So when I was in high school, I lived with my old school Filipino grandmother. She's 103 years old. You cannot get more old school than that. So in old school Filipino culture, we don't have gentle parenting. We had the opposite, authoritarian parenting with a splash of gangsta. My old school Filipino grandmother does not fuck around. Her parenting style was either ignoring you or telling you to shut the fuck up. No in between. Ignoring you, not talking to you, or hey, you're preventing me from ignoring you, so you better shut the fuck up. Now, my parents were not as harsh as my grandmother because they did tell me they loved me once. But my grandmother lives and dies by the shut the fuck up rule of parenting. And if you were wondering, the shut the fuck up rule of parenting only applies to Filipino girls. Because if you're a Filipino boy, you can do whatever the fuck you want. But if you're a Filipino girl or woman, you have to be quiet and let the men speak. So my grandmother, from her perspective, if you were a woman who's outspoken or standing out in some kind of way, you were doing that because you want men to notice you so that they'll have sex with you. Okay? So even in high school, my grandmother thought I was a whore. Okay? So every time I got on the honor roll, whore. When I got an after-school job working for a habeas corpus attorney at 15, whore. When I got into Berkeley, whore. Okay? And can you imagine if she was sitting here tonight, me on stage with a microphone, what would she call me? Whore. Which is crazy. Because every time I come up here, nobody ever tries to have sex with me. This is sex repellent. Never happens. Now my mom is a different flavor of authoritarian, toxic Filipino parenting. She does continuously call me a whore, obviously, like my grandmother, but her favorite nickname for me is lazy shit. Yes, and there's only one thing worse than being a whore. It's being a lazy whore. Which is an oxymoron, if you ask me. Because whores are hard workers. Whores are dedicated to their craft. You can't suck one dick and call yourself a whore. That is an insult to whores like me everywhere. So, but I don't argue with my mom or my grandmother because they do not listen to me. But my mom does not believe in praise or compliments. She thinks they make you weak, they make you lazy. So when I was growing up, she never told me I was pretty. She told me other girls were pretty, she never told me I was. When I was 30, she casually told me, oh, I didn't want you to think you were attractive, so you would study harder. So when I was growing up, I thought I was this hideous Quasimodo Filipino girl that they let out just to go to school. Okay, so the first dusty ass boy that came along and told me I was pretty, I was all over that motherfucker. I was like, thank you so much for seeing past my physical deformities and accepting me and loving me for my straight ace like my grandmother said you would. So the worst perpetrators of old school, toxic Filipino culture are Filipino aunties. So I got my mom calling me a lazy shit, my grandma calling me a whore, and I got my Filipino aunties telling me everything else that's wrong with me. You're too short, you're too fat, you're too ugly. And when you're 5 years old, you take those insults with a straight face because you know if you start crying again, they're just gonna make fun of you even more. But I have to thank my Filipino aunties because they prepared me for the harsh reality of social media. I posted a reel of me taking a walk on Instagram, and all I said is, I like taking walks, they help relieve stress. Somebody posted a comment that said, fuck you, you're ugly. And it would have hurt my feelings, except my Filipino aunties have been insulting me in my face while smiling at me my entire life.